I never understood what India is until I opened this book. And there's a phrase that India is like the variegated colors of a peacock. But boy, when I opened this book and I saw what Sunita has pulled off, it is truly a wondrous book. What it is, I'll let Jyoti and I'll let the program walk you through it. But good work, good work.
Thank you so
And
much.
of course, thank you for your book. Everyone has a sweet tooth. Looking forward to it. Bye. Go ahead, Jyoti, now do the form.
I put it on the chair or something? Sure. I'll put it right.
We're a full-service organization. Okay, so my name is Jyoti Menon. I'm a member of the board of the Indo-American Arts Council. This is only my second year on the board, and what's been really incredible as someone who's not at all in the arts professionally, it's amazing to see the work this organization does. We not only bring this LitFest, we have a dance festival, we have a film festival, and partner with a lot of organizations for different events. So please follow us on social media. I pretend to be a millennial, so please do that. And then, or maybe I should pretend to be Gen Z, but I don't know what they do. The second thing I'll say is, you know, when I was asked to intro this session, I was really excited because I really like food, and I don't know who doesn't like food. So I was like, okay, how bad can this session be? But, you know, jokes aside, when we think about food, it is so much of our culture, right? How many meals are you at where you go thinking about what is your next meal or what's for dessert, or when you're traveling, I pick my hotel near the best restaurants. I don't care about the museums, right? So that, I mean, maybe I shouldn't say that at a arts event. I love the museums. I take that back if this is recorded. But all jokes aside, let me just take a moment to introduce our speakers. You've probably seen their bios and already heard some great comments, but you have to bear with me anyway. So let me first introduce Sunita Kohli, who's a legendary architect, designer, and author. The India Cookbook, From the Tables of My Friends, celebrates the extraordinary range of Indian home cooking. Through her writing, she captures how recipes are often heirlooms, carrying with them not just flavor, but history, culture, and emotion. If you think about it, people talk about what would your last meal be. Many people say some big fancy meal. Nope, I say my mother's cooking. So I definitely can relate to that kind of a sentiment. Pooja Bavishi, I hate to admit it, I'm not a dessert eater. Bizarre. I don't know how I still have friends, but they get to eat my dessert. So, as the founder and CEO of Malai, a beloved New York-based ice cream brand that reimagines South Asian flavors for a contemporary palate, Pooja, your work has been celebrated on Food Network's Chopped Sweets and in Inc. magazine's Female Founders 100 list. Really, really incredible. And her journey is a testament to creativity. Of course, entrepreneurship, doing this is not easy, and the joy of innovation through food. And definitely, last but not least, the person who's actually going to guide this conversation, Simi Shah, who's the founder of South Asian Trailblazers, which is an award-winning media platform and agency spotlighting pioneering South Asians. This can't really be a fun fact, but it's a pretty incredible fact. She was Forbes 30 Under 30 honoree, and is definitely a gifted interviewer, so you're definitely going to have a great conversation here today. Thank you all so much for being here, and enjoy. Does everyone have a mic or do you have a mic? There you go.
Thank you for that kind introduction, Jyoti, and welcome everyone. I hope you all have had your breakfast, otherwise we're going to make you very hungry in this conversation. I want to start off by spotlighting these two incredible individuals who've written phenomenal, illustrious cookbooks, but who also have storied careers in work well beyond the world of food, which we're going to talk about today. But first, I want to invite both of them to read you an introduction from their cookbooks so you all can get a sense of what these books are about before we leap into this conversation. So, Sunita, maybe you can read us a few words from your introduction.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for your generous comments. I guess, am I expected to speak through the mic?
Yes, that's right.
So I write that the India Cookbook, this is in my introduction, I write that the India Cookbook is not a panoramic overview of food in the Indian subcontinent. Rather, it is about the pluralism of Indian food and the variety in home-style cooking. It is about artisanal food, cooked and served in the homes of one's many friends throughout the length and breadth of India. And then I go on to say that food in India is a religion, an identity, a cultural and societal signifier beyond the pale of our quest for unity in diversity. Because food is an important part of culture and sharing. Food and recipes are about personal histories and collective memories. They are a part of social history. This cookbook is an account of how culture most intimately expresses itself. There are dishes for all occasions and for all seasons. There are recipes here that can be used for dinner parties as well as for family get-togethers. Now the first book that I had done, which is the Lucknow Cookbook, which was so kindly released 2 years ago. And so the India Cookbook is a continuum in a sense of that, and the last will be, hopefully, the International Cookbook Brunch. So what I have written in the India Cookbook is actually also the journey starts in the Lucknow Cookbook. So I'll just read out a very short bit from here, from the Lucknow Cookbook, that the recipes in this cookbook are quite distinctly Lucknowi. And when I say Lucknowi, Lucknowi was an all-embracing city that took in people from all over. Of course, the pious Hindu families and the Muslim families were there, but when refugees came, like my parents were refugees, so they all added, in a sense, to the food culture of Lucknow, because my mother was a legendary cook. And in Lucknow, the hallmark of the food is delectable to behold, is aromatic and delicate, and is most importantly nutritious. This book is primarily about the food that was served in our homes and in the homes of our numerous friends, with all its seasonal variations. And I'm so glad that my publisher had asked me to co-author this book with my mother, which I considered a privilege, and to write an account of my parents' fractured histories, because they came from undivided India, from Lahore and Quetta. So these are the histories that have produced the food that we serve in our homes. And I continue to say that David Lowenthal, the American historian renowned for his work on heritage and spatial concepts of the past and the future, had famously pronounced that the past is a foreign country. This cookbook, although palpable with nostalgia, selectively recaptures events and objects from the past that are a part of the intangible heritage of food. Objects from the past and familial memories of gentler times. These are collective memories that conserve a sense of continuity, of belonging, and of being rooted. I believe that food engenders social and family harmony. It anchors us and connects us to the past, grounds us in the present, and gives us a sense of identity and belonging. Our personal histories define us, and I have chosen to define this partly through Lucknow's food traditions. The preparation of food is learned by observation. It is a process of osmosis. And one can certainly cook from these books, but one can also read through the recipes to get a glimpse of Lucknowi culture in this book and of Indian culture in the India Cookbook, and of the lives behind those recipes. This is a book for cooks. These are books that are for cooks and for armchair cooks, because for people who really love food, it is a lens through which to view this particular world of Lucknow and of India.
Can we give her a round of applause? I love the line on armchair cooks because I consider myself an armchair cook.
Yes.
So it's beautiful. Pooja, maybe you can read us the opening of Malai.
Yeah, I was just going to add on to what Sunita ji said, that what I love about culture, like cooking and relating to a culture, is that it's ever growing. And you showed that in your book. And this is a continuum, because Indian American culture, the diaspora, is a continuum of what is defining what Indian food is, which is what we're trying to do at Malai. I'll just read a very short excerpt from my introduction. I've thought a lot about why I started Malai. For years, I spoke about my dreams of eventually opening and operating a dessert business, but I could never figure out what that would look like. The ideas kept coming, but nothing felt quite right. That is, until I started to make ice creams. It was then that some part of me instinctively knew to combine Indian flavors and spices that did not traditionally go together. Rose and cinnamon, saffron and black pepper, green mango and cardamom, cayenne and star anise. But that shines through so beautifully in butterfat and dairy. Super specific, sorry. For the first time, I had a platform to express my whole self. Malai is exactly the project that I dreamed of my entire life, one that celebrates Indian heritage and culinary traditions in a delicious way for a diverse audience. I relish being able to tell the stories of what it was like for me to embrace the Indian flavors in my suburban American upbringing. And one of my greatest sources of joy is connecting to people through these flavors.
Can we give her a round of applause? What I love about the connection point between both of your books is this idea of food as a vessel for storytelling. And where I want to start this conversation is, neither of you are authors by trade. Pooja, you're the founder of Malai. Before that, you had an esteemed career in the world of nonprofits. You always knew you wanted to start a business in the world of food. But I don't imagine that you were like, I'm going to write a cookbook one day. Can you tell us about why this cookbook and why now?
I actually always wanted to write a cookbook. I am one of those people that buys cookbooks not for cooking, but for just like reading, right? Like I love the stories that come through food. I love hearing about people's connection through food, and I think that's why I just like, my favorite part of Malai 10 years in is when people tell me, I am not Indian, or I read this story on your pint of wine, this inspired you, but I didn't get that connection, but this is why I love the flavor. And like there's a connecting point through everything when it comes to food. And so I wanted to write that story. Like Malai, the company, is a way for me to tell my story, and I wanted to be able to document that like this is why all of these flavors, all of these memories, all of this inspiration came together, and I hope that it inspires something in someone else.
I love that. Sunita ji, you are a Padma Shri awardee in the world of interior design. You have an esteemed career in the world of architecture and beyond. And I know you studied literature, but I can't imagine that you had set out to write a cookbook either. Can you tell us about the genesis of this trilogy, starting with the Lucknow cookbook?
All my life, I've only had unplanned careers. I mean, I became a designer by by accident. And now, of course, I'm 55 years into it. I'm quite ancient. I'll soon be 79. And so I studied literature. I worked on a PhD on Christopher Marlowe, far removed from the world of design and architecture. And then that's another story. Then I became a designer, and I found my niche in life. Similarly, with writing a cookbook, I never planned to write a cookbook. In fact, I was in the midst of writing a big book which will come out next year on World Heritage Sites in India. And my mother who wrote her first cookbook, which was hugely popular, and at 88 she had it published herself from Rowley, and she gave it the title of Continental Cuisine for the Indian Palate. So I told her, Mama, how does anybody keep titles like this? But this was her choice, and the book did extremely well, and because it was simple, and it had this title, but it's basically about Anglo-Indian food that we grew up in Lucknow. And so she had written another cookbook which was going to be published by Bloomsbury, and then the commissioning editor passed away. So I was very keen that my book should come out before my mother. So I asked my publishers, who are Aleph, and I asked David Devidar, I said, do you know of a good publisher for a cookbook? And he said, oh, Sunita, we don't do cookbooks. I said, no, I'm not even for a moment suggesting that you do it, but publishers know other publishers. So he said, well, let me think about it, and I'll get back to you in a couple of days. So he did, and he said, we will publish the book as long as you co-author the recipes with your mother, and we don't want 345, which is what Bloomsbury was going to publish, but we want 150. And we want you to write a 10,000 word essay on your parents' history. So I thought, how easy is this? After all, I became a designer by accident, but I'm very English, so writing comes, one has written all one's life. And so I said, how easy is this? And I just have to take out 150 recipes, abstract them from my mother's 345, and the book will be done. Believe me, it became the most difficult thing because my mother, without exaggeration, produced another 1,000 recipes for consideration, and now of course I have to think about what I'm going to do with those recipes because they just can't go undocumented. And then when I started writing my parents' story, it becomes another thing. So I took 3 months of writing 12 hours a day, including Sundays, to complete this book. And when this Lucknow cookbook, that's the first, when it came out, it was sold out within 3 weeks. Now it is in its 11th print edition. Thank you. And it has been declared a modern classic. So David knew what he had asked me for, and then he said, you immediately have to do another cookbook. I said, I thought you never did cookbooks. He said, no, I changed my mind. So that's how then the India Cookbook.
You invented the category for Aleph?
For Aleph, yes, I was the first.
It's interesting because in the Lucknow Cookbook, it's co-authored with your mom, and now the India Cookbook, you've co-authored from the tables of your friends, and it involves such an incredible cast of characters. I mean, Sharmila Tagore, Shabana Azmi, I mean, you name it, it is so fascinating. Can you talk about why this concept, and also how difficult it might have been to take up the mantle of 200 recipes across 6 regions of India?
I just wrote off to my friends. After all, Shabana is somebody I've known for perhaps over 50 years. And Sharmila Rinku, as her friends call her, one has known for maybe 45 years. So these are all friends, and one has eaten wonderful meals at their places. So when this book started, I just, as far as the Lucknow Cookbook was concerned, my daughter, who is, our company is K2 India, and she's the CEO and the creative director of that company. And she said, Mother, I give you leave of absence from work because this is my grandmother's book. But there was no such thing for the India Cookbook. So I wrote off to these friends, and I think barring 2 people who were then traveling, everybody else said, of course we'll send you a recipe. It's another matter, like if I called Shabana and I said, Shabana, your recipe was coming, what happened? She said, oh Sunita, please forgive me and everything like this, but I'm in a shoot. Kal to main aapko pakka bhej dungi. I said, but that kal of course never came. And then eventually when she sent me the recipe, she sent me a photo of, you have these school copies and you don't want to waste the pages that have not been written on, so you tear out the written pages and then you convert that into a cookbook. So she sent me copies of that. She sent me a photo of that. I couldn't even read what was in the gutter line. So I said, Shabana, ye kya hai? She said, oh, tumko to khana banana aata hai, tumhe samajh aa jaye. I said, I got thrown these recipes by my friends. I wish I could write a story about how I got the recipes.
A book about writing the book. Pooja, in a similar fashion, your book also takes up the mantle of bringing South Asian flavor and ingredients to the mainstream in the form of desserts. I mean, it encompasses so many of the ice cream flavors that you serve at Malai today, all these baked goods and other desserts. I mean, my favorite personally is the masala chai and the parle-ji ice cream sandwiches. Just a beautiful fusion of what the snacks we grew up with also Western ingredients and flavors. Was there any part of you that was nervous about how this book would be received, or had to think through how do I make South Asian culture tangible to anyone so that anyone can feel like they can pick up this cookbook and read it?
Yeah, I think that that's something that we're trying to do at Malai anyway. We're trying to mainstream South Asian food and South Asian culture and South Asian flavors. But I have a couple of points for that. One is South Asian food is having a moment in the US right now, especially in New York. And it is so cool to be a part of that, to be a leader in that, and see that, our shops, we have 4 shops, they skew non-South Asian, non-diaspora. And it's so interesting to see that we're just a local ice cream shop rather than we're the Indian ice cream shop. And I think that that's why this book was really important for me, because there's nothing like this out there. There's nothing about just South Asian ice creams or to highlight these flavors. Even the pantry section is not it's not saying that get these ingredients because then you can make these recipes. It's get these ingredients so you can have a better pantry. you can have ingredients that you can use in all sorts of different cooking and all sorts of different recipes, both savory and not. And so I do think that it wasn't that it was a fear. I've always said that Malai is authentic only to myself and my stories, and I think that people connect to that people connect to people, and people connect to food. So I wasn't afraid of that, but I hope that it's received as that rather than pigeonholed into an Indian cookbook.
Absolutely. Did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I was just going to say that it's really a very beautiful book. Last night I went through it, and there are many things that I would actually like to try out, including your Indian granola and many of your ice cream flavors.
There's nothing Indian about the granola, just saying.
It's interesting because both of you also have really, like I said, you're leaning into this idea of storytelling and talk about the origin of and the histories and the personal connections to the recipes in the book. Pooja, can you share any specific one that really resonated with you when you finally put pen to paper?
I think that one of the defining recipes for Malai in general is our masala chai ice cream. Obviously, masala chai has such a personal meaning to every single family, every Indian family everywhere. But for me, what I wanted to capture in a single scoop is that what chai signifies to me, besides home, which it signifies to so many people, is also the start of the day. So my mom she still uses it, a stainless steel teapot. Very traditional Indian stainless steel teapot. And I've been drinking chai since I was probably too young to be drinking chai. And I would be getting ready for school upstairs, and my mom would already be downstairs making breakfast, and I would hear the clank of the teapot. It would clank shut as soon as she was done making the chai. And that, to me, that sound, to this day, when I'm at home, I hear that. That sound to me is time to start the day. That is the beginning of the day for me. And that, you only start the day when you feel at home, when you're at home, right? That you get that feeling. And that's the feeling I wanted to somehow put in a scoop of ice cream. And the words that people use when they're either making the chai recipe at home or they're eating it at Malai is cozy. It reminds me of whatever, their family, right? It reminds me of the holidays. And it's all this feeling of home, which is exactly what I wanted to capture.
I love that because in the introduction, you talk about waking up in the morning and smelling your mom's chai when you were not allowed to drink it yet. And I have visceral memories of doing the same thing with my parents as a kid. And I think it speaks to this whole idea of both of your books of preservation of stories, preservation of memories, and preservation of our own personal histories, as you said in your introduction. Sunita ji, I'm wondering if you can share a similar story. I mean, I know some people were just, copying, mailing you these recipes, but I know some of your friends actually made these dishes for you, sometimes with a twist that originated from some part of their history or family. Can you talk about that?
Every recipe in this book I've tasted in their homes. So, the book began from that. And those are specific recipes that I asked for. For instance, we have, there's Prita Reddy who lives in Chennai, and she heads Apollo Hospitals. She used to be a non-vegetarian, she turned into a vegetarian. Her mother is a legendary cook who brought out a wonderful cookbook. Now, she sent me avakai biryani, because avakai they make themselves from their own mango orchards and everything. And she said it, I have had it many times, and in fact just a couple of weeks ago only, I had dinner with her and she said, Sunita, come for dinner and I'm going to make you a better version of the avakai biryani, So these things happen, and also, for instance, my mother, I'll quickly say two things. That my mother has a recipe in it called the jalebi pudding. And she was very well known for jalebi pudding. But where did jalebi pudding really come from? My parents, as I said, my father was from Lahore, my mother was from Quetta, and they, during the time of partition, they moved to Lucknow. So they always had that partition mindset of never wasting anything. And jalebis in their Mussoorie home their second home was in a hill station called Mussoorie. And jalebis would always be brought there. In fact, there's a picture in it of from Mussoorie home, and Siran, my cousin-in-law, is in that with my father. So jalebis would always be brought for tea, but jalebis would also be left over for the next day. So what would my mother do? She would, add eggs to it and milk and everything, and this totally transformed, metamorphosized pudding would come out called the jalebi pudding. And I think that is part of partition mindset. But that is, and then the inventiveness, the second thing is my husband, rather my late husband, we always have kulfi in the house, and we have a very simple kulfi in the house, but it's always there in the fridge. And he had, and it's not heavy with khoya, which is thick in milk, as everybody knows. But it would, kulfi. And then one summer he started making as almond kulfi and pistachio kulfi. So I asked him, I said, how have you made these, every lunch during the summer months? And he said, why should I tell you? I said, are you crazy? I'm your wife. And then I discovered he would be sending my secretary off to the mithai dukan to get barfi, and barfi would then be crushed and mixed up and all the rest of it. So there are endless number of stories. Every recipe has a story behind it.
You touched on some of the photos in the book, and I want to spend a second on the imagery, because you sourced all from your own collection of these utensils, and there's such a beautiful connection to partition in the realm of when people were displaced and they could carry basically only what they had on their backs, they would still carry these utensils because that carried such deep memories for them and their families. Can you talk about the imagery in the book and why you decided to do that?
My grandmother, or I should say our grandmother, because a cousin is here, in Lahore, and at the time of partition it was Lahore to Rajpur to Dehradun and eventually to Lucknow. After all, these are stories of displacement, which is what came across, I think, in the introductions. My grandmother used to make malpuras, which is the oldest, I didn't know it till I really researched which is the oldest recipe, dessert recipe in the world. It's mentioned in the Rig Veda. Yeah, so this came out. Now our grandmother would be making this in a kadhai or a chula and sitting down and us grandchildren around it. And she would be using a pawnee. Everybody, I think mostly they understand what a pawnee is. It's a pierced spoon. And interestingly, when my mother got married, she gave that pawnee to my mother, who then carried it from Quetta to Lahore. And of everything that they left behind, my mother carried this pawnee with her to Lucknow, and I have it with me. And it's on my desk, and I use it as a paperweight. So memory and a sense of belonging never really leaves people who have a history which may be fractured, like my family's was, a history which is of displacement. So these are objects that carry memory, and therefore in this cookbook, I have used it as almost as a leitmotif, throughout as a thing for defining chapters, etc. So there are objects like that carry memory. I mean, vessels are so civilizational. We have amongst the largest selection of vessels in the country, and each is shaped by generations of artisans. It's not one man who, for instance, designed the lota, which Charles Ames called the most perfectly formed object in the world because of its balance when it was empty and filled with water. So really there are so many layers in any cookbook that one can go on and on.
Absolutely, and again, it goes back to this theme of food as a method of preservation. And Pooja, you also do this beautifully because what you're doing is marrying South Asian tradition and bringing it to the modern world and the flavors and foods we consume every day. How have you found that balance of trying to stay authentic to the foods that we grew up with, that our parents made for us, that our grandparents first came up with and carried from their ancestors, while making it something that feels accessible in the world of food we consume today?
Yeah, first of all, I could listen to Sunita talk forever. So just pointing that out. I also think we should collab on the jalebi pudding, don't you think?
You heard it here first.
I think that actually this is a good question to follow what Sunita just said, because
Please call me Sunita.
No. And I grew up in North Carolina. I'm first generation Indian American. My parents immigrated here from Gujarat, and I grew up with this nostalgia for their childhood, for their growing up. I almost felt like I missed out on something, that I missed out on this romanticized version of India that they still talk about, right? They still, to this day, 40 years after being in the States, they talk about their romanticized childhoods. And
we all do. We all do.
Yeah, and that's...
We all do. You don't have to be living out of your country to not have a romantic... It isn't romantic, it was actually true, because we grew up with such utter simplicity.
Yeah.
But utter simplicity and the joy in that simplicity.
Yeah.
I think that is what defined us as Indians. At least I should say my generation of Indians, because I'm the oldest here.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, that there was there's a simplicity to life that is so attractive. But I also think about my grandfather who died several years ago, who was a dermatologist in Ahmedabad, and he, was a part of the partition movement. He was part of the Quit India movement, and he would tell me stories, but before he died, he was still practicing using, emailing his patients, and, had transferred all of his files to electronic file. It was just he kept up with the times. And if he were alive today, he'd probably be using ChatGPT, I have no doubt. And I think that like that is what I was like trying to capture as well, that there is this romanticized view, there is this view that like I wanted to capture what I felt, not necessarily what I experienced, but what I felt. But I didn't grow up like that. And I grew up trying to like, you know, sometimes we celebrated Diwali, sometimes it landed on a Wednesday and we totally forgot about it. Sometimes, you know, we had, like we would go to temple on Sundays and we would do all of the rituals, and sometimes we didn't. We celebrated Christmas every single year, but we also would, you know, recognize that like, oh, you know, Holi's around, like we should find something to do. And like it's that connection to culture that has created a completely different culture. And I think that recognition, right? Like I think it took so long for us to feel here as part of the diaspora that we didn't miss out actually, that we're creating something new. And this is as equally important as the culture that's there. And it's everywhere. It's all over the world. India, the subcontinent, has the largest diaspora after the continent of Africa. And so to think about everyone creating these subcultures, after there's so many subcultures in India itself, it's cool to think of it as expanding rather than lesser than.
Of course.
I was just gonna say, I think what's beautiful is in that way, both your books fit together so beautifully, right? We get a piece of both, and we get to retain and sustain both in tandem with one another at the same time, and what a beautiful thing that is. I want to make sure we have time for audience questions. I have one last question for both of you, but first I'm going to open it up to our friends here. Raise your hands high, and I think we'll have some people run around with some mics.
Hi. Just had a quick question. There are a lot of Indian restaurants in the US which, you know, make a big thing about their dishes and how authentic and original and different they are. Can you talk about the legitimacy of their claims compared to your traditional recipes?
Is the question to me?
For both of you. Yeah.
See, I have limited experience of Indian restaurants when I'm traveling outside India, because I make it a point as far as possible not to eat Indian food when I'm traveling, because I really enjoy eating food from different places unless it's something very special. Now, the one restaurant I do know of is by Rohit Khattar called Indian Accent. And in fact, he's got 4 Kashmiri dishes in this. It's not, and his food is brilliant. So what he serves at home is this sort of food, because he's Kashmiri. And he also serves, but he will not serve, for instance, like in Indian Accent, one of their signature things is small little naans with blue cheese. I love it. I love it at Indian Accent, but that's not his. So I don't really know. I just know that, say for instance, in England, the Indian food is pretty atrocious, because you know they just change. I'm sorry, I haven't offended any restaurant person from London, because everything has the same curry and you just add different things to it. Paneer hai to paneer curry ho jayegi, chicken hai to chicken curry ho jayegi, but the base is all the same. So there's no variation. Whereas these books carry, the India Cookbook carries the variation of food of different tadkas and bagars and the potlis that we have that might have 30 spices in Lucknow, and bouquet garni as they speak of it in French. So these variations really come in homes, and I don't think that restaurants do it. But having said that, there are some brilliant new Indian restaurants in London, I know. that are really taking Indian food to another level altogether. So it's not Bangladeshis cooking North Indian food. You know?
I just have a quick thing to say about that too. I think it's the first time in a really long time, or ever, in American cooking and American restaurants that are Indian, that are that they're focusing on regional cuisine rather than it's just North Indian food. And I think that that's really important as Indian food becomes much more mainstream. That we're highlighting the fact that India is so diverse, and it's not just one monolith.
That's very, very true. Because earlier, even in India, I mean, in South India they knew of butter chicken or chola bhatura, and in North India we knew of idli, sambar, and dosas. There's so much more. For instance, Gujarat, where you come from, which I really consider the nouvelle cuisine of India because of its delicacy, its small portions. So every region is so rich in their own food traditions, and I've tried in the India Cookbook to bring out these differences as much as about how delicious home cooking can be.
Namaskar, Sunita. This question is for you. You actually took me to my hometown, Lucknow. I'm from Lucknow.
Gee.
So my question is, growing up, what is your favorite joint from Lucknow? One. And second, your favorite food growing up from Lucknow. It can be from your mom's kitchen too.
Well, my mother used to learn food from various people. So I, for instance, love gilawat ke kebab, which unfortunately in Delhi is called galoti kebab. But they Punjabify anything. So the kebabs, the biryanis, and I'm not saying just, even in our home, it's not just mutton biryani, but like there's a delicious kathal ki biryani. Kathal for Americans is jackfruit. And or pulaus, the different types of pulaus. We have tehri, which is a vegetable pulau, and you can up it, down it. So many variations, so many things from Lucknow which are really, of course, I have to say that in Lucknow, nobody ever made sheer mal or bakar khani rotis in the house because it was considered infra-dig that a woman would cook rotis. And this I realized, the Lucknow Cookbook was released by Javed Akhtar in Bombay. And if you wanted to insult a woman, like he said, he was narrating this, and he said that, so he said his mother had gone into this house and she said, Rasila, suna hai ki tum roti bhi banati ho, meaning, Rasila, I've heard that you also make rotis, which was an insult, that you were of a lower class, that you could also make rotis. So there were all these differences. Of course, pulkas and everything got made, but rotis were bought from particular people. And then the one thing that I cannot have outside, and which is not made outside Lucknow, is nimish. This is the most delicate dessert in the world. It is, in the old days, of course, nobody can do it like this. They would be huge pans of milk, which would be in the winter, which would be put in the outdoors, and dew used to fall on them and create a froth. And the froth used to be collected and collected.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they have khoya in it, so it's different. So nimish is so delicate. I've never really had it outside Lucknow.
Sorry to interrupt. You can try it at Indian accent. The Makhan Malai was close because my husband is a Kashmiri. He's from Chaw. That's why.
I know, but they do daulat ki chaat, with all the.
Oh, okay. Now you have a better, but I thought.
No, I don't have a better. You asked me what do I enjoy in Lucknow, and I said nimish, which you really.
Okay.
Which authentic nimish really only can be had
True.
in Lucknow.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Last question.
You.
Last question.
Thank you. Hello. Yes. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
You make the last question.
Thank you very much. I related very much to Sunita's, Kohli's editor's request that you write something about the 10,000 words about the times of your exile from Lucknow, from Lahore. I wonder how you tied that write-up to the cookbook part. I'm myself a refugee from Uganda, so I related that to the whole story of the lost homeland and the exile. So please.
You know, this of being displaced and stories of displacement, they resonate with many people around the world, because it wasn't only just us and millions of us who experienced it, but around the world. I mean, it continues to happen. And the last thing I just want to say about Nimish. Today you cannot make Nimish because you would die of pollution. In Delhi. Can you make Nimish or not at all? So, but to come back to the story of being displaced, you know, we are all in a sense, people who've come from elsewhere. Memories will always keep us displaced. And as Anita Desai, the famous novelist, wrote in a preface to a book called Sunlight on a Broken Column, which is the classic of Muslim life in the 1930s in Lucknow. She said, the past is a foreign country.
Yes.
You have one last question?
So it's more of a comment. I think one of the biggest mistakes we have made is to combine two of you.
I agree. I should be in the audience. I would love that.
I truly believe that, and that's a mistake on our part. And I think we should have had two sessions, one with Sunita ji and one with you.
Very kind.
No, really, I do mean it. And I think everybody was enjoying both of your sessions. So I really apologize for combining, for whatever reasons we did that. So, you know, I want to start with that. And I had a question for you. Why do you keep saying South Asian rather than Indian? What's the fear of that? Because there's no something called South Asian, it's Indian.
Well, no, there is a region for South Asia, right? And I think that actually, that Sunita ji is actually talking about all of that when we're talking about refugees and exile and all of that, that like, it used to all be one region, it used to all be India. But it's not anymore. And people have, especially when you're grappling with identity so much here, when you have come to a new country, I think having the ties to your home country, like that nationalistic pride, is really important, and it's a part of identity. And what we're representing is, you know, certainly I am of Indian heritage, you know, and I'm American as well, but these should, it's all encompassing when I say that, like, these flavors are from a region. Even things like, you know, addressing the fact that, like, Faluda is not Indian, and yet it's in this cookbook, right? Like, food and culture and everything's it has continuity to it, and it's the lines are blurred. And so to be able to say that this is from a region rather than a country, I think is important.
Go ahead. May I just add to that? To the question that you know, and very quickly I must do, because I know we're out of time. You know, you brought a very good point that it's a whole area, because therefore in my book I put in a whole chapter which is subcontinental India, because you know, we cannot go by recent political boundaries that have fractured the subcontinent of India, and therefore Pakistan, Bangladesh, well, Nepal and Bhutan were always independent, but they were part of the Indian subcontinental identity, as was Burma, as was even as far out as Yemen. So these are all part of, and therefore you have the Rupaiya and there are so many other things. So our subcontinental identity is what I celebrate in the India Cookbook also. Because in Lucknow we grew up with a soup called, garam dahi ka shorba, meaning a hot yogurt soup. And I always thought it was a Lucknow invention. Till I went to Turkey and I said, no, my God, this came down the Silk Route from Turkey to India. So, I mean, we in Lucknow pride ourselves on making food that is cooked in pomegranate, and pomegranate juice. But where did that come from? That came from Afghanistan. Afghanistan and Persia. And so similarly, there are so many things that, but this is the wonderful cross-culturalism of food, that it binds, it moves, languages move, cultures move, because you might create political boundaries, but believe me, you cannot have cutoffs as far as cuisine and culture is concerned. They will flow like the air.
Thank you all for your questions. I just want to let our amazing speakers today leave us with a parting note. Whether it's the India Cookbook or Malai, I encourage you all to pick up these books and order them wherever you can because they're phenomenal. What is one thing you want people to take away when they read your book? And Pooja, maybe we can start with you.
Okay. I think that this book is made for everyone, not just a certain group of people. And I think that's what we're trying to say as well, both of us. But don't let this intimidate you. This is what American flavors are. We get to define them. Malai is about redefining what American flavors are and who gets to define them. And I think that capturing that and claiming that is really, really important. And this cookbook is one step for that.
Thank you. One thing you want people to take away from the India Cookbook?
There are many things.
Pick one.
I hope that one realizes that Indian food is so diverse, and is so diverse. It's as diverse as our respective ethnicities. And I think we need to celebrate it more and more. We need to celebrate regional food more and more. But on a happy note, this is happening.
Thank you. Let me just add a short postscript note. First, Simi, deep appreciation.
Yes.
What a masterful moderator. Our future is bright. Our future is bright. At ISC, where we celebrate our classical arts, we have always had a session on cookbooks. And why is that? And I'm going to share with you something wondrous. Sugar and spice was the first dual-core technology that humanity came up with in India. Before that, there was fire, then there was pottery. And then came the technology of spice and sugar. But this incredible technology had 3 T's. It had taste, it had therapeutics, and it had trade. This technology was incubated by women. All over India, there was experimentation going on. And so when I look at you, Sunita, and when I look at you, Pooja, I see you as modern day carriers of a profound technology birthed in India. and carried in each of these homes, whether it's Shashi Tharoor's home or somebody else's home. And for that, I salute you. I want you to go back. I want you to come back with more books, more stories of this technology. Let's hope one day you write a book about the wines of India. And my last point to Sunita ji is this. She broke my heart when she talked about the Afghan pomegranate, because we in Kashmir respectfully think that the Afghanistani pomegranate is sour. Our Kashmiri dal is the greatest pomegranate in the world. Thank you. On to our next one.